looking very comfortable.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I've been, I teach bass lessons, and so I ended up getting like during the lockdowns and stuff. I ended up uh, getting a better setup and stuff. And then I was gonna, stream, and I did start for a little while, like just doing the Twitch streaming and stuff. But um, yeah, ended up obviously just using the gear for all my personal lessons, which makes it a little better. Just like bass goes direct into the interface, it just sounds a little nicer. You know what I mean? I mean, your camera looks great. You know what I mean? I think let me see if I can get my framing good. Yeah. I mean, it's a little different. There's a couple ones now I found. Who is the company? I think it was called Optima. I'll send you a link if you give me your email. But there's a couple companies now that make like actually like because this is similar to a DLSR. It's a mirrorless Sony A6600. And then you run out of that, the HDMI out of that into a capture card, and then that goes into the computer, so you can get those just real high quality glass and stuff. But some of the newer like webcams, for a couple $100, maybe even 150, are very very close to the quality of a DLSR or mirrorless. You've ever I'm sure everybody's kind of noticed this, especially with all the zooming and skyping and stuff over the last 4 years. But when it's like if on your phone or something, if your camera lens is up here, but the
Mhm.
person's face is down here,
Mhm.
when you're looking at their face, you're looking way away from the lens, and so you're not, So there's a couple webcams that like middle, and you just kind of put it like right in the middle of the person that you're talking to's eyes, and so it's like you're actually kind of like looking at each other a lot more than it's true. That's true, and that's just a whole nother format. Um, I don't know.
Yes,
Maybe the
yes,
YouTube stuff goes viral. You never know
yes,
how that stuff goes, but it is every little bit counts. So that
yes,
is cool that
yes.
like to have the option to do it. I suppose, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was Tony. Yeah, but so um, we sent. I guess he had even been sent the money, and then we just never got anything from him. And there was only like 3 weeks, I think, until they were like, "You've got to put something in. It doesn't matter." So Al contacted Tony, and we're like, "Dude, we know this is like crazy low amount of available time, but can you do an album cover for us in like 2 weeks?" And he's like, "Yeah." So Sun Eater was like way under the gun.
It's,
Yes, 100%. So I even pulled up. Um, Let me see if I can pull this up here. Here we go. Yep. Okay. So when Johnny and I were talking about that, I mean, this record has taken so long to get conceptualized. I mean, we knew that we were going to make a sequel to that to Sun Eater. Probably like almost immediately after putting Sun Eater out, we knew we wanted to make another record, and I had a buddy of mine had we were walking down the beach one time, and he was like, "Dude, Sun Eater, Moon Eater, he's got to be the thing." And so I had mentioned Moon Eater to Johnny, and he's like, "I'm not quite sure about the eater part, but definitely love the moon concept. Obviously, it gives us the yin and yang aspect, which even lends itself into the art very easily. You know what I mean? Because it's like the sun Eater record, obviously lots of orange tones, sunset tones, and so then with Moon Healer, we're like, okay, we'll go obviously like you know, um, more bluish purplish type of hues, nighttime stuff. But so anyways, then Johnny came up with Moon Healer was his concept, and so we had hit. We knew we wanted to go with Tony again because we were trying to keep the whole team on this essentially the same as much of it as we could. So we went back to Jason Sukoff again, obviously, and like let's have Tony do the art, obviously, so it's a mirror to Sun Eater. So Tony, we started sending stuff to probably back in about 2019, and we had been in touch with him before that, 2018, 2017, that kind of stuff. But it wasn't until 2019, October 2019, that we started like really putting together like the conceptualization and like reference stuff. So in essence it was like um we're kind of try to avoid the over the top death metal gore
mhm.
sadistic type of a feel, as obviously we did with Sun Eater, and we were going more like ghostly occult retro sci-fi type of a feel. So much sick art that it was kind of easy actually even to go through his existing um catalog, you know, or portfolio, I guess you'd call it, and to be like, okay, we love this type of a background, and then the eyeballs that are coming out of this dude, and having the split head open right here, that's great, with sort of this framing from this one. So we really had a really strong vision, particularly Johnny, about what he wanted for the cover, and so yeah, it was just really influenced by the songs, the concepts of the songs, which are sort of further down the rabbit hole of the Sun Eater stuff. Just really digging into the sort of hallucinogenic exploration of these other realms, and either afterlife, or even Tibetan Book of the Dead. Like in between stages, if there's reincarnation, or maybe it's just a really hardcore trip. But really happy with how it came out, and Tony's just phenomenal. Yeah, I think that what we found was that there was a lot of different topics, like we were saying on Sun Eater, that we were like, what if this character would continue on this journey that they were going on, where would they lead, where would they get led into? And so I think it's sort of like anytime you get into any type of major existential conversation, right, you're going to end up at some of these more I guess esoteric or even just out there concepts. So it was Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, or the Aleister Crowley stuff versus even Egyptian Book of the Dead, and specifically what we found with the Tibetan Book of the Dead, kind of fit like that. This character's running into, and like some of the stuff is from personal experience, and some of it's drawn from this other character, and a lot of it is fictionalized, or basically imaginary, excuse me, but of coming into contact with some other type of entity while you're under the influence of the psychedelics when you're in the trip, and who are those people? Because it's very, or people, right, but it's very if you look at like the Rick Strassman stuff, he wrote the book DMT, the Spirit Molecule. The congruence of experience that all of the people that he was injecting with his actual like government approved studies was kind of insane. The levels of familiarity in the stories that they were telling of these beings that they were coming into contact with, similar to like the Terence McKenna's self-transforming machine elves. There's these very like archetypal entities that you come into contact with, and are they benevolent or malevolent? And so what we found is as we continue to research, and Johnny and I were sending each other back and forth stuff for years, really, about all these different topics, especially as we were getting into the songs and what we were going to get into writing the stuff. And Johnny writes all the lyrics that we were going to be making the videos this time as well. And so so we found that with the Tibetan Book of Dead, I remember reading this one page, and we were like, yeah, he's like, that's really nails so much like of where I guess I hypothesized this character was at, which is, there's these bardos in the afterlife after you die in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and we loved kind of the gnarly, just the conceptualization of it, that like you're going through, and there are these like Buddha bodies that are basically trying to tell you that everything that you're seeing in this in between phase is an illusion, and that you're one with everything. And if you can I guess internalize that, then you can escape the cycle of death and rebirth. And then if you don't get it, right, then you keep going to like the next bar, like deeper and deeper layers of the bardo. And at first it was kind of like, and my paraphrasing of this is probably pretty shit compared to, obviously, so there's probably some Buddhists out there that are gonna be like, this guy is just butchering our shit. But anyway, so at first they're sort of like, it's like this astonishment, that you're like, wow. And they're like, if you not give way to that astonishment and realize it's all one, you're one with all of it, then you escape the cycle. But if you don't get it, and then you go to the next bardo, and then they start to get not so nice, it gives way from like, oh, astonishing, amazing, I guess displays of either physicality or spiritual beings or whatever, towards like demonic. And so even that you're supposed to get there's still like some element of like the Buddha body or Buddha telling you that all these, even these, not lower level, Gnostic demons that are eating your guts are an illusion. And if you can recognize that this is all an illusion, you're one with everything, and you can still get out, escape the cycle of death and rebirth. If you don't get that, then the last step is basically you're trying to get away from these demons who are kind of basically showing you your karma that you had during your life and repeating it, so you feel like shit and all this, and you're trying to get away from these folks. And so there's like these, like, I believe it's like 6, if I'm not mistaken, but like caves that you go into, and you're trying to escape these demons, and you go into these caves, but they're not caves, they're wombs. I was just, so we picked up the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which I never had, and read it, and I was like, this fucking stuff is crazy, man. I mean, whether it's real or not has nothing to do with the fact that it's, incredibly entertaining and fun to write about. So that helped us kind of like sort of tie all this stuff together, because there were so many different elements that we were bridging, you know what I mean, as far as all this material, And one aspect of it, you would think that that coming, finding out that there is, because a lot of these experiences are, like I said, very similar that people have, basically, like experiencing infinity or realizing that that consciousness doesn't end, comforting, right? Because then you're like, oh, isn't that all of our, some people's like greatest fears, that we just turn off, and that, this is it, that's it. So when you're alive, so when you're dead, and that's it. And everybody's, probably the greatest fear that's centralized into human beings, or maybe any animal, is death. So this is, if there's like, a direct experience that it doesn't end, that your consciousness continues going, you would figure that would be quite comforting. But if there is like malevolence, or not fun times ahead, hypothetically, that you have to go through, that can be really horrifying. I mean, I wrote a song on a Cephalic Carnage record, Misled by Certainty, our last record that came out 14 years ago now, but it was called dimethyl modulation, a dimensional modulation transmography, right? And the a buddy of mine, the guitarist, and I, it was a sort of a summation of this experience of like going into the other side, and it being not necessarily the greatest. The thing about it is, I think, it's like having that respect for it, to know that. And they've talked about this in a couple other interviews too, where people are like, so do you think you're kind of like glorifying, and it can be used for good or bad, and just to be able to have that, I guess, like have that level of respect, that it's like, yeah, the explorations that you can have in here are probably the most profound things you can experience as a sentient human being, like the synaptic firing alone, the storm of synapses that fire under some of these chemicals are just the most insane thing you could probably ever experience. So respect that.
Yes.
That and setting, you know what I mean? Where are you doing this? Who are you doing this with? Is there predispositions in your family? All those type of things, and like infinity nightmare. Well, way longer than any of your regular REM nightmares, you can be like, is this ever going to end? Like, because it's a direct experience of infinity. Like one of the interesting things about it is that you can, there's, especially with dimethyltryptamine, the insights and the information, it's like that. Terence McKenna always described it, not always, but one of my favorite descriptions he had of the experience was, he's like, load the universe into a cannon, aim it at your brain, and fire. And I thought, like, wow, that's such an accurate observation of what it's like. But that's so much information that it's very, and for such a short period of time. It's not like, with ayahuasca or yahe, when you have, from, dusk till dawn, essentially, to 12 hours, or, a longer LSD or psilocybin, where you've got much time to decode. It's like foop, foop, in and out. So like, all of a sudden, all your realizations are very fleeting and they're gone. So there's some folks that have like the like a system where you like take, psilocybin or LSD, and then immediately, do N-dimethyltryptamine. And then as you're coming out of the N-dimethyltryptamine, the LSD or psilocybin will be coming up, and then you can sort of transition and allow yourself time to decode all that information. But that's that's getting out there, and that's kind of part of the essence of this record, is to be like, careful how far you go, because sometimes it's possible you might not come back. Yeah, exactly. I mean, just even I guess even thinking about like quantum, like you think about all this AI stuff that is going on right now, right? I mean, having Chat GPT, even 3.5, which is, free in your pocket as an app. You think about, so this song was called The Omega Point, and it was based off of a story called The Last Question that Isaac Asimov wrote. And it was basically like the most insanely amazing synopsis of one way that this universe could exist. And it was basically like, hypothetically right now, we've got Google and ChatGPT and all of our technology. And what happens is we keep developing more and more powerful computers for the AI to, I guess, use as its computational basis. And as those computers get better and better and get quantum, because right now we're still using binary.
Mhm.
Is this, say you have a house, right? And you're like, it's a 25 room house, and you're like, there's a red ball in one of these rooms. And you ask the computer, which room is the red ball in? It has to go 1, yes, no, 2, yes, no, 3, yes, no, 4, yes, no, 5, yes, no, 6, all the way through all 25 before it can tell you where the ball is at. Quantum computers, which would essentially mimic the human brain, can check all at once.
Yeah.
Our brain isn't going through every single neuron one at a time, as in binary code. It's all at once. So say, and imagine if that gets continues to its evolution and then ends up being integrated with quantum computing. It's going to have, I mean, that's essentially what Asimov talks about in this book. They called the computer multivac, and then it was called the universal AC. But essentially, like, it was all human consciousness merged with this artificial intelligence, which was essentially all knowing. Because even just Google, we can ask Google anything right now, like having almost like God, right, in a way. Yeah, I mean, you look at the telescoping nature of evolution, right? So you've got 13.7 billion years. I just saw this other thing that say it was a lot longer actually now, but for this conversation, we'll say 13.7 billion years for the universe, right? How long until planet Earth developed? And it was like 5 million years, right? So the leap was massive, and then from we'll stretch that 500 million years to here, and then say how long till single-celled organisms, right? And then how long till hominids, right? And it keeps getting shorter and shorter. And then how long till the Industrial Revolution, 150 or agricultural revolution, 150 years ago. And then the age of plastics, and then now age of computing, and then social media. It's like 10 years ago. So we're reaching a crescendo. It's like Ray Kurzweil, faster exponentially. We're racing towards the, I guess the culmination of all hypothetical intelligence at once. Sure. So this one's great. It's called The Last Question.
Okay.
And it's a short story. It's like 20 pages. So much, because I was like, oh my God, that's at the very last 4 words of the thing. And you're like, that's so fucking brilliant that this guy summarized all of existence in 20 pages. Valid question to ask. That's a long fucking time. I would just say life. The J-Fat cats were a little younger than me. I think Johnny's maybe 35 now, and I'm 41, and so I think him starting out at 16 is when that Doom EP essentially made its way via MySpace, which was just another crazy way for a band to reach high levels of success. If you think about it, and I've thought about this before, like I can't really think of any other artists that are as good of an example of utilizing a new technology to reach levels of success that used to take much, much, much longer. You know, the concept of going viral, right? Like before it was like, you know, you had to get discovered, right? You had to play shows, and then, you know, maybe there'd be an A&R guy or somebody from a label would discover you, and then you'd have to get on the radio, and maybe even in the late 80s and 90s and stuff, it was like MTV, right? Well, when MySpace came out, you know, that was right. If you were on a social media network, that's our new term for it. But if you were on like a chat group or something, it was for fucking nerds, you know. I was on new groups in 2003 and stuff. And so when it was like, hey, do you got any, you join MySpace and you have online friends, it was like so not cool. But that really changed. MySpace really changed that, I think, by focusing on bands putting pages, you know, having to put pages up and getting to and putting their music up there. And all of a sudden there's a way for anybody all across the world to hear your local band's stuff for free. And so they had those 4 songs that they put up on there, and it just went insane. They went viral, you know. And I think that trajectory was a curse in a lot of ways. It obviously brought the band high levels of success, but instantaneously at 16 years old, they're like, they skipped 10 years of band development that you would have to go through, you know, and kind of eating shit and, you know, paying your dues, so to speak. So there was like a sort of a negative stigma attached to the band. And I don't know, it just kind of forced them to kind of like get into that stuff without getting through, I think, maybe what else everybody wanted to do with their lives. And so, you know, Johnny got married right around the time of Sun Eater, and got pregnant. Johnny didn't get pregnant. His wife did. But and so he was kind of like, it was bittersweet, because we had just put this record out that we were all the most proud of out of anything we've probably ever done with the band. And yet he was kind of like, I gotta, you know, I got a kid now, man. I can't go out and, you know. So then that kind of opened the door. For a little while we were like, what do we do? Because the rest of us didn't want to stop touring. And so at that point, you know, I think it caused a little bit of like, you know, sort of existential reckoning in at least Tony, and Tony decided he wanted to be a doctor. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to go to med school. And so the particular branch of medicine he wanted to get into, there was a few schools in the States that were very expensive. But there was like a much better deal for as good of a program in Ireland. So Tony moved to Ireland. All of a sudden it was like, shit, you know, now we're not just split across multiple states that are very far away. We're on different continents. And so it was just kind of one of those things. He's like, you know, Johnny went to school, graduated, he got a job, you know, a very, very successful job working like coding IT and stuff. And then Tony was in med school, and now he's a doctor. And so all that stuff sort of had to happen. But it didn't stop, you know, Tony kept writing the entire time. Like I've said many times in interviews so far for all the press for this record, that like some of these songs are, you know, 7-8 years old, that Tony was sending stuff. He's just always playing guitar, so he was sending stuff in 2015, 2016, and so it wasn't until 2018, you know, or I would say actually 2016, 2017, when we had 7-8 songs. And then it was like 2018, 2019, we got real serious about the concept and the album art and wanting to record it. And then, you know, Naveen, we got locked down to do drums. He records drums in 2020, and then all that lockdown shit happened. And so it was like a year before we got guitars done. And then, you know, I recorded bass in July of 22, and then Johnny did vocals like New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. He was doing vocals. They stayed up all night and did the vocals. So everything was so spanned out. It was just like, we wanted this record to come out legitimately. If things would have went as planned, this record probably would have been out in 2018 or 2019. But you know, just the logistics of geography and other life events caused us to have to, you know, it took a little while, took a little bit. No worries, man.